The first televised debate between U.S. President Joe Biden and his Republican rival, former President Donald Trump, saw a shaky, tentative performance from Biden that rattled Democrats, while Trump battered him with falsehoods, and the two oldest U.S. presidential candidates ever descended into an exchange of personal insults.
The whole country is exploding because of you.
My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser.
Appearing on CNN's presidential debate on Thursday, 4 months before Election Day in November, the two traded barbs on abortion, inflation, the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, even their golf games, as they aimed to shake up what opinion polls show has been a virtually tied race for months. A hoarse-sounding Biden stumbled in the debate's first half hour, and Trump pounced.
With dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death.
81-year-old Biden and 78-year-old Trump are under pressure to show they're fit for office. As the debate wore on, Trump issued a barrage of critiques, many of them well-worn falsehoods, including migrants carrying out a crime wave and that Democrats support infanticide. Studies show immigrants do not commit crimes at a higher rate than native-born Americans. Trump also dodged questions about the January 6th Capitol attack, refused to accept any responsibility, and claimed that many of those arrested were innocent.
He's telling you it's simply not true. The fact is that there was no effort on his part to stop what was going on up in Capitol Hill, and all those people, every one of those who were convicted, deserves to be convicted.
The debate carried on with no live audience and strict rules on microphone use, which aimed to avoid chaos that railed their first debate in 2020. Still, the pair took every chance to make jabs at each other.
I wasn't really going to run until I saw the horrible job he did. He's destroying our country.
Biden went after Trump over his felonies.
You have the morals of an alley cat.
Give you a minute, sir.
I didn't have sex with a porn star.
While concerns about the eligibility for office weighs heavily for both candidates, Biden's performance Thursday could land a major blow to his campaign, at least in the short term. Two White House officials said Biden had a cold. One top Biden donor who did not want to be named called the U.S. president's performance disqualifying and expects a fresh round of calls for him to step aside ahead of the party's national convention in August. A Reuters Ipsos poll that ended Sunday showed voters think Trump is a better candidate for the economy and immigration matters, while Biden had the edge over Trump for responding to threats to democracy.
The U.S. Supreme Court on Thursday ruled that abortions may be performed in the state of Idaho, for now, when pregnant women are facing medical emergencies. The 6-3 decision effectively reinstates a lower court ruling that Idaho's near-total abortion ban must yield to a 1986 U.S. law known as the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, or EMTALA, when the two statutes conflict. EMTALA ensures that patients can receive emergency care at hospitals that receive funding under the federal Medicare program.
Abortion is healthcare. We want it now.
President Joe Biden's administration had sued Idaho, arguing that EMTALA takes precedence over state law. Idaho is among 6 states with abortion bans that offer no exceptions to protect the health of pregnant women. After the conservative majority on the Supreme Court overturned landmark abortion protections in 2022, the U.S. Justice Department turned to EMTALA to preserve some life-saving access to the procedure in states enacting abortion bans. Here's Attorney General Merrick Garland.
It does not matter what state a hospital subject to EMTALA operates in. If a patient comes into the emergency room with a medical emergency, jeopardizing the patient's life or health, the hospital must provide the treatment necessary to stabilize that patient. This includes abortion when that is the necessary treatment.
The court's decision, an unsigned one-line order, lifted a block the justices had placed on the lower court's ruling in January. And it comes a day after the text of the decision was inadvertently posted and then quickly removed from the court's website. Biden, seeking re-election this year, has sought to make abortion rights a centerpiece of his campaign as Democrats try to use the issue to political advantage against Republicans in races across the country.
Ahmad Abudella was born in the Lebanese border village of Yarin before the land to the south was known as Israel. He'd hoped to live out his days there, but aged 80, he's just left. as his hometown was pummeled by Israeli shelling. Now he's in Beisarieh, 30 miles north. What kept me there so long was the soil itself, he says. Turn that soil and you'll find our fingerprints on it. Most families fled Yarin in October, soon after the Lebanese armed group Hezbollah began trading fire with the Israeli military in parallel with the Gaza war. But Abdullah and his younger brother were the last residents still living there this spring, until his offspring threatened to come and die with him.
You think I decided? It was my kids. They gave me a choice. Either you come down, or we come up there.
More than 95,000 people have been displaced in southern Lebanon since the Gaza war erupted, according to the International Organization for Migration, or IOM. Across the border in Israel, 60,000 people have fled their homes. There, the state funds hotel stays and other temporary housing, while displaced families in Lebanon have received little or no support from a state grappling with a 5-year economic meltdown. Abdallah's wife, Lamia, says there are many like them relying on the help of relatives.
No one knocked on our door and no one asked. I swear no one asked. Everyone's been dealing with their own situation through their own efforts. The state is absent.
Many of Beisarieh's residents fled Yarin in 1978, during an Israeli military incursion early in Lebanon's civil war. Many settled there. The town has a Yarin district. Ahmed's nephew, Samer Abdallah, was born in the district in 1979. He built a home in Yarin in 2011, thinking the border with Israel had stabilised. Now he's in Beisarieh again after fleeing the shelling. People fear displacement won't be temporary, he says.
About the experience of displacement, when our parents first left, they said it would be 2 days and they'd be back home. This feeling or past experience stays with you. It gets passed down through generations. We said 2 days and we'll return. Then 30 years went by until we went back. That's a feeling that some people are afraid of.
More than 80% of those displaced in Lebanon are being hosted by relatives or friends, according to the IOM. Others are renting out homes, and just 2% are living in collective shelters. Families in Lebanon have been hard hit by the economic crisis, but Lebanon's government has not announced stipends or other long-term support to those affected by the hostilities. Hezbollah has distributed some financial packages and covered rent for some families. The Abdallah family said it received a food basket from the Southern Council, an official body, but it was not enough to cover their needs during their displacement.
This is the moment Bolivian President Luis Arce confronted Army General Juan José Zuniga, who led a failed effort to overthrow the government after attempting to storm the presidential palace and ramming the entrance with an armored vehicle. Hours later, Zuniga was seen handcuffed on live TV after his arrest for the failed coup attempt, which has raised fears that democracy in Bolivia remains at risk. On Thursday, it was revealed by a senior interior minister that the Bolivian government had intelligence that a coup attempt could occur, and that Arce had received reports about destabilization attempts. Arce has since slammed the coup attempt and swiftly named a new top general. According to a government official, Zuniga had been told a day before the coup attempt that he would be stripped of his position. The former commander is now among 17 people who have been detained so far and could face prison terms of between 15 and 30 years. Wednesday's events uncovered the tense political fault lines in the South American country ahead of the presidential election next year. Arce's Socialist Party is split between backing him and his former mentor turned political rival, ex-president Evo Morales. Zuniga had recently said that Morales should not be able to run again for president and had threatened to block him if he attempted to do so.
This abandoned theatre in Port-au-Prince has become a refuge for those displaced by gang violence in Haiti's capital. For those inside, like bricklayer Roman Ferre, much now depends on a UN-backed peacekeeping mission, led by Kenyan police officers who arrived in the Caribbean country this week.
We hope they're here to sort something out, because we're really in trouble. Our houses are burnt down. Our homes are set on fire and looted. That's where we are. I've been here for 10 months. We are really in trouble.
Haiti Prime Minister Gary Conille visited the Kenyan police base in the capital on Wednesday. He said he believed this was the start of a new beginning for the country and asked people to be patient and vigilant. Gang wars have now displaced over 500,000 people, and nearly 5 million are facing severe food insecurity. At the abandoned theatre, teacher Renzo Novanel said he wants the foreign countries intervening in Haiti to consider the plight of those who have lost their homes, as much as they think about restoring order.
Because we are victims and we want to have a solution tomorrow so that the country can get better and we can get our heads out of the situation we find ourselves in today.
Kenya volunteered to lead the force last July. However, deployment was repeatedly delayed by court challenges and worsening violence in Haiti. Troops have also arrived even as deadly protests back at home prompted doubts about Kenya's ability to lead the security mission. The Kenyan police are expected to be joined by officers from some 15 other countries, including those in Africa and the Caribbean, as well as Canada, France, Germany, Britain and Spain. Altogether, the security forces will form a 2,500-strong mission funded primarily by the United States.
From parched wasteland to watery paradise, torrential rainfall in Chile has restored, at least for now, reservoirs and lagoons that had dried up after years of severe drought. The Acaleo Lagoon became a symbol of the crisis as dead cattle and fish carcasses lay on where there was once water. The recent rains have refilled the lakes and dumped snow on bare mountainsides in the Andes. For local villager Eduardo Torres, it's like looking into a vanished past.
It has been more than 20 years since we last saw this beautiful plain. Every year that passed, we grieved more and more for nature, and today it is here again, the lake from those years.
And Gloria Contreras, a campground administrator, hopes that local livelihoods will similarly return.
This is wonderful because it reactivates everything, even jobs. With the drought in the lagoon, many jobs were lost. But now with this, water is life because everything is reactivated. Every business, even the smallest vendor.
But the revitalization is likely short-lived. The rainfall is due to a recent El Niño weather pattern that brought low-pressure storms from the Pacific. And it won't make up for a decades-long drought, which had decimated water supplies and hit local industries. Patricio Gonzalez is an agroclimatologist at the University of Talca in Santiago.
After 15 years of mega drought, the central zone of Chile needs at least 3, 4, I would say up to 5 years of normal and very intense rainfall for the total recharge of aquifers, for the reservoirs to return to the same level, and for precipitation and snow levels to at least come close to normal.
And with a new weather system, La Nina, moving in, dry weather and drought conditions are likely to return.
BP is having a change of heart on renewables. New boss Murray Auchincloss has decided to slow investment in big-budget, low-carbon projects, particularly offshore wind farms. That's all according to Reuters sources. It marks a stark reversal of the direction taken under predecessor Bernard Looney. He tried to drive BP away from dependence on fossil fuels. That strategy didn't impress investors, however, with shares in the firm underperforming other big oil players. European rival Shell has already scaled back its investments in many renewables. Now the sources say Auchincloss wants to prioritise investing in and even acquiring new oil and gas assets. Green energy projects will be assessed to see if they can deliver quick returns. The firm has reportedly already reassigned people who had been tasked with finding more such projects. Some jobs are also expected to be cut in the low-carbon sector, though the sources say no targets have been set. A company-wide hiring freeze is also in place. Auchincloss has promised a pragmatic approach since taking over from Looney in January. He's aiming for $2 billion in cost savings by the end of 2026. Shares in the firm rose around 1% in early trades on Thursday.
Nike shares plunged over 12% in after-hours trade Thursday, following a surprise warning on sales. The sportswear giant forecast a fall in revenue for the fiscal year. It's predicting a drop in the mid-single digits range when analysts had expected a modest rise. Fourth quarter revenue also dropped and missed targets. Nike faced headwinds, including weak international demand. It also faces growing competition from upstart brands like On and Hoka, which are seen as more fashionable. Speaking to analysts after the results, Chief Financial Officer Matthew Friend said there were signs too that cost-conscious consumers are growing more cautious about spending. Nike is planning a new range of lower-priced footwear in response. Now the firm hopes the Olympics will help it win back some market share. Ahead of the event, it's touting its roots in competitive sport. Nike says it's spending more on this year's games than any previous one. It's also been pouring money into developing new running shoes, including an update of its popular Air Max line.
Sales of Zeekr electric vehicles have shot up in Russia over the last year. It puts Chinese car makers ahead of local competition in Russia's small but rapidly growing EV sector. Chinese car makers have already seized more than half of Russia's car market since Western competitors pulled out 2 years ago. They left after Russia sent troops into Ukraine in February 2022. Governments in Europe and the US are growing increasingly more wary of Chinese dominance in EVs, but Russia has welcomed Beijing's brands across all automobile sectors to prop up its car industry. From May 2023 to April this year, more than 20,500 new EVs were sold in Russia, a jump of about 350% on the previous year. Industry data showed Chinese brands made up more than half of sales, while Russian car makers sold fewer than 4,000 new EVs in that time. Chinese premium brand Zeekr has led the charge, despite having no official representation in Russia. Irina Frank heads a dealership in Moscow, and she said Zeekr sold more than 8,000 cars since June last year.
In China, more than 30% of cars are electric vehicles. We in Russia still have less than 2%. Secondly, people understand that it's environmentally friendly, it's fashionable, it's profitable. It's more profitable than gasoline. I repeat once again, both from the point of view of maintenance and from the point of view of fuel cost per 100 kilometers, and it is the future.
A separate dealership said most buyers are wealthier than the average Russian. They added premium cars are the only widely available category of EV, and around 40% of EV owners have charging facilities at home. The Zeekr X, a compact SUV, is on sale from around just over $46,100, similar to prices in Europe. But in a statement, Zeekr said it had not entered the Russian market and had no approved sales network there. The automaker said it had not deployed any infrastructure such as charging stations or conducted any other related business in Russia.
We think that he has to make a bigger effort in bringing back the hostages. We want to talk him down because he is a major corrupted person. He lies and thieves the country and the people. He doesn't do the job. He wants to continue the war endless. So we think he's a jerk and he has to go home. And we are demonstrating against him.
You know, he shows up congruent, strong, confident, puts it to rest. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you got two candidates. Trump's only 3 years younger. And I think the contrast is really around values and vision and ideas. You've got someone who wants to roll back most of the progress last half century and put America in reverse on voting rights, civil rights, LGBTQ rights, women's rights, access to abortion, contraception, and someone that wants to own the future, fresh air progress as it relates to work he's done on CHIPS and Science Act, infrastructure, et cetera. So to me, it's really about the age of ideas, the staleness of Trump's ideas compared to the vibrancy and vision of President Biden's.
The American people realize when something is fake, when something is phony. They know when the fix is in. They know when something is political. That's what happened to Donald Trump in Lower Manhattan. This was a violation of his constitutional rights, but it was also interfering in a presidential election. And so I think the American people have already spoken on that. I don't think it's going to really weigh in at all, because at the end of the day, the American people are worried about the future of this country, not the political games that are played by the Democrats.